Now, the rest of the story.
Welcome back to the rest of the story. Prepare for a talking video, because I'm gonna be in the shed pretty much bouncing around everything until I get tired of talking. So what's been going on is, well, some stuff. Got some answers to some questions, or to a big question that I had since the 1st of June, or second week of June. Not happy about that answer. Brought the bobcat back up. The deer's still here, of course. I was using this to load hay yesterday. The reason I opt for this machine over that machine is this machine is actually smaller overall. I mean, it's pretty obvious if I park them side by side. That thing's actually bigger than the JCB. And for some of the places that I am stacking and pulling hay from, the bobcat is actually a better choice. It's actually pretty tight even for the bobcat. A downside to the deer, which I haven't really discussed this machine that much, and I probably won't for a while yet, but an issue I had was you have this lip right here. So my first comment about the deer is negative. This lip right here, it's a pretty defined edge versus your similar point on the bobcat. You know, it's not really going to catch anything. Oh, sorry. On the deer, this is obviously going to catch, and on one of the sheds that I was stacking hay in, it's tight, and the way this whole boom raises up just by design, this does have no problem in catching rafters. And luckily I saw what I was doing, but yeah, I almost caught a rafter and ripped the whole shed down. So kind of a plus side for having a smaller machine. A buddy of mine, you guys know my buddy Ryan. I got my friend Ryan and my brother Ryan. This is my friend Ryan. And that's what we got to talking, is actually you can make a pretty good argument, because he's got the same thing, where they got a 326 deer, and then they have an older case machine. And I've said the same thing, trade that case off, buy a bobcat, you know, get a decent machine, right? And he said, my problem is that he likes that smaller machine because it's still a loader that can get in and around places that that bigger deer of theirs can't get. So I mean, you can't really argue that fact. And my problem is I want to go buy eventually one of those, that machine right there, for myself, for down at my place. Currently I have the bobcat down there, which is a huge improvement over nothing at all. But like what my buddy and I were saying, was you can almost make an argument for buying another smaller machine to get around and do some of those tighter area jobs. I mean, that's where you kind of lose out on putting a loader, say on the 7600. It's good for out wide open places. I mean, probably going to handle mud better than any skid steer machine. I mean, I know this because we had a 7400 with a loader on it back when we milked cows, and that thing would go pretty much everywhere you needed it to. Problem is, it's big, it's lunky. When you got the loader hanging off the front end for loading hay and whatnot, it did make a bit of a challenge trying to be very nimble with it. Now, if I wanted to take a tractor and loader down to the valley and just purely load hay with it, I think I'd do all right. But it's not going to be something that I'd be able to unload hay and then take it and stack it into a barn, because a lot of the places where I'm stacking, you drive in, turn 90 degrees, and then stack a bale, and everything in reverse. So every machine really has its job. I mean, all farms are different, which I kind of figure everybody understands that, but it seems like a lot of people don't understand that. Everybody wants to believe that what works on their operation works for everybody. That's just simply not the case. So what we did yesterday is we moved some hay out, partly because I wanted to, not really because I had to. But here's the deal. The horses are hooked up. The machines are serviced. We got new blades on. We got about 90 acres of hay that we're going to be cutting here, hopefully. It's hay that I wasn't planning on making. It's looking like it's going to be the first week of August. I'm going to go through and make 80 plus acres of those are actually going to be mine. And I have pretty much no readily available storage for the hay that's going to be made down there. And I called up the place where I'm going to be selling this stuff, and I told them what I had, what I want for it. And originally they told me that they couldn't guarantee without seeing the stuff. They figured probably 30-40 bucks less than what I was really looking for, and I left it at that. Well, they called me the next morning and asked if I was still interested in bringing some up for this next sale, which by the time this video posts, that sale was probably a week or two ago. And I told them just bluntly, I'm getting tired of beating around the bush anymore. It's pretty much, this is what I'm thinking. Just get tired of skating around the conversation with pretty much everything in my life anymore. It's just like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what's going on, what do you have to say about it? And I told them what I am looking to get for this hay is 30 to 40 bucks more than what they thought it'd be worth. Well, he talked to me yesterday. I told him what it is. It hasn't had any rain on it other than the little bit of rain that rained on it, just hauling it back to the home farm. And he said, honestly, he says, we should be able to get that at least. Well, we ended up taking up, this will be load 4. They closed by the time before I could get this load up there. So this is going to sit in here for a few days. Pulled the first load up across the scale, 1,200 pounds of bale. That's what they are. Super not impressed with it at all. Largely because I was thinking 1,300 on the low end and was really aiming for about 1,400 pounds per bale. Talked to them and they said that's actually a pretty common theme because I made this stuff back the second week of June when we had that super dry, dang near like 0 humidity weather. Cut it, tedded it, waited a day, and then baled it. Same program I'm going to be doing with the stuff that we're going to be cutting. That was actually too much for how dry it was. I mean, it was in the 90s and all that with no humidity. It really could have been cut, tedded, baled. Just 1, 2, 3, day 1, day 2, day 3. And they said that's what a lot of guys are saying, is that their hay got too dry and now it's taking more material with less moisture in it to really add up to any weight, because they're looking for about 15% moisture is actually considered dry. And which bale should we do? Because I got my handy dandy moisture tester. For the persons that were asking me about these, let's go towards the middle of the bale. This was like 220, 225, 250. It was 200 to 300 bucks. Honestly, now that I have it, I couldn't really imagine not having it, just because it's nice to know what this stuff is doing. So a couple $100, it's worth it to know what your hay is doing, especially largely for heat. Moisture is not something I really worry about too overly much, but hey, it's still something you have to address. This hay, which is, it's grass hay, if you guys can really tell without me blocking the light out, it pretty much kept all of its color. Yeah, you got some of this, but it's grass, like that reed canary in the bottom ground, which is where this hay came from. This is first cut. The lower quarter to third of the plant, once it gets so tall, it actually does start to lose its greenness, and you get this. But I can feed this hay to my cows and I can't hardly keep it in front of them. So I don't know what you guys think it's worth in different parts of the world, but moisture wise, we're at 8.5%. It's almost too dry. That is too dry. Almost half of what it really should be. So I lost weight by not having moisture in it, which is a pretty common theme when it comes to corn, beans, whatever else. And if you guys didn't see that, it's 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So the stuff is obviously not heating or sweating. And this was 7 weeks. This stuff's 7 weeks old. If it was still heating now, I'd be in full out panic mode. The stuff that I just made, that 60, 70 bales, that stuff is 17%, and it's moisture-wise, and it is just now starting to come down in temps. It was high 80s, low 90s. Like I had one or two at 91, 93, and that stuff is down to 74, 72, 73. So that stuff's pretty well out of its sweat, but I'm expecting that stuff, granted, it's all the same size, all through the same baler. They're 60-inch bales. Nope, 60-inch bales tall. And I'm expecting those to actually be heavier than these guys. So why am I selling the hay? Make it a little bit easier on myself because it opens up a bunch of room in my sheds down at the valley that they are calling for rain. So when I go through and get the stuff made, hopefully here by the end of the week, I can put it inside right away and not have to worry about hauling it out to one of these sheds up here and trying to get it in before rain, because my goals and intentions are as stated here. Cut it maybe tomorrow's Sunday, probably Monday, because we got upwards of 3 inches down at the valley, upwards somewhere between 1 to 3 inches across basically all of our ground. And for those of you who are new to the channel, the valley farm, my hay farm, is a third of its bottom ground. A third of it is flat, level ground on the bench that still likes to retain moisture. And the other third of it is that field you guys saw me make the other day. I haven't been down to the valley since, but those low spots that, you know, swamp / ponds, whatever, did have water in them. And I was planning on trying to cut those. What it's looking like now is I'm gonna cut everywhere where I can cut. If they're starting to dry out, that's great. Probably not gonna be driving through them. Ted it, maybe ted it again, you know, 2 days. And then the 4th day, probably rake and bale it, haul it in, and then get it hauled out. And then I actually already have the fertilizer already kind of spoken for. So once I get fertilizer on, then I'm gonna wait 2 weeks, and I'm gonna go through with radiate and a weed spray and knock out any weeds that are coming up and go for a 3rd cutting. Because if I can go through and get this hay made this upcoming week, fertilize it, get it sprayed, and then if I cut it the 3rd week of September like I was originally planning on for 2nd cut for the stuff that I'm making now, it'll have had as long to grow as this hay I'm cutting now. And the hay I'm cutting now is ready to be made. So that stuff will be gone in a couple days. Hopefully it brings me what I want. The machines are ready to go. The only thing that I really have to say about these machines is, because it is wet, I mean the ground is wet, I'm gonna go through, already have on the deer, have to decide how much more I want to narrow these up. I have the panels in for windrowing the material as it's coming out the back, about halfway closed, so that's going to expose more of the ground between the windrows to hopefully potentially dry up. Now, depending on how wet it is when I go to check the ground tonight, taking the forwarder down, if I don't think it'll go tonight, I'll go for tomorrow. I'll go down tomorrow and check it again, and I'm almost certainly going to cut it Monday. But because I'm like right out the gate, I'm planning on tedding, I'm going to look at windrowing it regardless, unless the ground is like bone dry, which it almost certainly won't be. It's a way to kind of help it dry out more consistently. We got to put the shields back in the coon, and I'm not even sure if we'll narrow those up all the way, but probably to a certain degree. When it comes to tedding, it is actually easier to ted when there is a little bit of windrow versus it being flat. So that's kind of everything I got going on today. I mean, it's kind of a ho-hum day. Hopefully things will get kind of interesting this week. I'm not really complaining because I wasn't planning on getting a second cut off of my hay at this point. If this year would have went the way I thought it was going to go, I'd probably be would have just made first cut off of everything last week, and I'd just be getting ready for a second cut in September. So every year is different when it comes to farming, right? So with that, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. Take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I'll talk to you guys later.